Howdy, 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 ho! You ready to go? I'm ready. Come along with us for Gardening 2018 at FBP, Farmer Brown's Paradise, for episode 5. We've got 6 gutters down below ready to plant. All my plants are screaming in their net cups, plant me, so I need to get busy on it. However, starting tomorrow, over the course of the next 8 days, the forecast is rain, 50 to 70% rain. Now, if it's just scattered showers, that's okay. Actually, that's kind of a good thing if we get a little rain afterwards, because it helps with transplant shock. But if we get a deluge of rain, that's not so good. I'm going to be planting beans and zipper cream cowpeas and winter squashes and summer squashes and melons. I'll talk to you for a second about squash. Some of you may be familiar with squash beetles, squash bugs. They're a problem. But a bigger problem are the squash vine borers. If you live on the eastern United States or a little bit of southern Canada, you know what squash vine borers are. In fact, on the map, it can even go as far as Texas on over to the East Coast. They are terrible. If they get in your squash plants, they will kill them very, very rapidly. Last year, they got all of my summer squash like overnight while we were out of town. And they got into a few of my winter squashes too, but I was able to do some surgery, remove those nasty boogers, and saved them. This year, I have a plan. I do not want squash vine borers, so I am going to beat them. The squash vine borer actually comes from a moth. Most people think it or mistake it for a wasp because it kind of looks like one. This is what one looks like. These moths are actually active during the day, unlike normal moths. So you can spot them. One day your squash plant is beautiful and healthy like this. And the next day it seems to go limp and collapse like this. All right, you see the damage in here? That's all insect press and vine borers. I think we might find a worm in there. Usually once it's limp, there's no way to bring it back. But I'm going to talk about 5 ways to try to prevent or deal with the squash borers. Way number 1 is to spray. Now, when the squash vine moth, whatever you want to call it, gets on your plant, it lays little tiny eggs. They are shiny and round and copper colored. They look like this. Interestingly enough, the squash bug's eggs also look like this. The difference is that with the squash bugs, they tend to lay multiple eggs all tightly clustered together, and the squash vine borer usually lays a single egg at a time, or if they lay in with multiple eggs, they're not tightly clustered. So here's the deal. How do you kill either the bug, the moth, or especially the egg, the larva? There aren't a lot of products out there that will go after the eggs. They will go after the actual wormy thing, but not necessarily the egg and the larva, the early stages. One of the products that I have added to my regime of spraying the neem oil Salsad Soaps Mix is a product called Rid Bugs. It specifically states that it will work on killing the eggs and the early larva nymph stages. So that's one of my go-to things this year, is to continuously add Rid Bugs to the neem mixture. I spray the neem mixture anyway once a week as a preventative, and that really is successful. But it's not successful. The neem by itself will not kill the eggs or the tiny little larvae. Neem really works on the soft-bodied insects. So you have to get something that's going to get to those eggs. The other thing you should do, besides inspecting your plants every day if you want them to survive, is to really look for those eggs. They can lay them on the stems. That's usually where they like to lay them, because that's where they're going to bore inside, but they may lay them on the leaves. Be sure and check the underneath sides of the leaves. If you find them, you should squish them. That's the scientific terminology for grab them between your fingers and squish them up and discard them, or drop them into soapy water. A soapy water death. And the other option is to use tape. You can get some duct tape, or that's pretty strong tape, but maybe blue tape, and wrap it around your hands like this and go in and pat and grab those eggs that way. Okay, so that was one. Spray, be consistent, maybe try Rid Bugs, and pick them off. Number two is mulch. You need to mulch the stems. Now, normally when you're planting things, you try to keep mulch away from, more bugs, you try to keep mulch away from the stems, but in this case with squash, the recommendation is to pile up that mulch around the stem, so that the moth cannot lay the egg down by the main stem. Because if it penetrates, if those little ugly little wormy things penetrate into the main stem, it's toast. Method number three, row covers. Argabon is a good brand that makes a fairly inexpensive row cover. My problem with row covers is because now that we plant in buckets and grow bags, it's kind of difficult to isolate your single bucket or bag with a row cover. I do have some ideas, and I also have those pop-up hampers you can get at the dollar store. The problem with that is that the cover of the hamper cover that comes with it really just doesn't give much light coming through it. So maybe over the winter I might actually sew some covers that will fit over that hamper frame, but I haven't done it yet this year. The other downside about using row covers is that your bees, the pollinators, cannot get to it if you've covered your plant. So you will have to hand pollinate. The fourth option are yellow bowls. Some people have had good luck with putting yellow bowls full of water, or even soapy water, out. The reason being is that the moths are attracted to yellow, which makes sense because the squash blooms are yellow. Rather than the bowls, I'm going to do something a little different, which I will show you using some yellow solo cups and a product on the outside of the cup. The yellow cups or the yellow bowls is a good way to control the population, and it's also a good indicator of whether or not the moths are out. Unfortunately, in our area in the south, we have two waves of the squash vine borers. The first wave is in late spring, early summer, and the second wave is in August. If you live further north, you're lucky. You only have one wave. When you start to see those little moths, be on the lookout. And also remember that it takes about 8 to 14 days for those eggs to hatch. So you need to catch them. Now, a fifth way is kind of not a preventative. It's a reaction, and that is surgery. You can use like a box cutter, razor blade. When you find a leaf that is limp, look for an entry hole. You're going to want to cut that stem and the leaf completely off the main stem of the plant and look for the entry hole. And then you need to make sure that you bring swift and damaging punishment to that very ugly white wormy vine borer killing your plant. There is a sixth preventative measure that I consider doing, and that is to wrap the main stem of the squash plant with either foil or that saran wrap, like press and seal. Last year when I did surgery on the winter squash, I did wrap them with press and seal, and that did help. But with the summer squash, there are so many vines that come out from that main stem. I just think it would be too difficult to try to do that. Plus, it would probably look like a metal welder was using our garden as an abstract art exhibit, and it already looks a little weird with all the foil on the top of the buckets. So if you join us down below in the garden, we will show you what we're going to install to hold our yellow cups. Okay, well, what am I doing with yellow solo cups? I have these 1/2-inch cheapo sticks that we have screwed to our rain gutter, and I'm attaching the yellow solo cup with a thumbtack. I'm not pushing it all the way in because as the bugs get stuck on the outside of the cup, I will have to replace it. Now, how are they going to get stuck on the outside of the cup? A few years back, Texas A&M was doing some research because they were having a problem down in the South Texas area, central South Texas area, with tomato wilt problems that were brought in by aphids. And tomato wilt is a virus. You can't cure it. So once it gets a virus, any plant gets a virus, you just have to rip it out, dump the soil and everything. So the aphids would work their way up from the bottom of the tomato plant, causing the wilt, eating on it and causing the wilt as it went up the plant. So they came up with this idea of using yellow cups. Now they used them down low by their tomato plants, about 1 foot off the ground, and they covered it with this product. If you've ever heard of yellow fly tape, this is the sticky stuff that's on the yellow fly tape. It's not a pesticide, so it's pesticide free. It is very sticky, and it is called Tanglefoot. You want to be sure if you use this product to get the Tanglefoot brand, because it won't wash off. But see, it's just like a sticky, gluey paste. So what I'm doing is I'm thinly coating the outside of the cups, brushing it on. Now, this is just an experiment. I'm not sure it's going to work for the moths that carry or end up, doing their egg thingy and turning into squash vine borers. The reason I'm not sure it will work for them is because they're not huge, but they're not real small either. And these little traps like these tend to work more for small insects like aphids and ants, white flies, things like that. So we'll see if this is going to catch those moths. If it doesn't, I can always just take them down or leave them up because they will catch aphids and white flies. But I can put some yellow bowls of water or soapy water out to try to get to attract those moths. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Yellow Solo Cup, you're more than just plastic. You're more than amazing. You're more than fantastic. And believe me that I am not the least bit sarcastic when I look at you and say, Yellow Solo Cup, you're not just a cup.
No.
No. Gosh, no.
No.
You're my friend.
Yeah.
My friend.
Lifelong.
Thank you for being my friend.
Oh, yes. Indeed. Here we go. You ready? Yellow Solo Cup, I brush you up.
Let's have a party.
Let's have a party.
A garden party.
A garden party. Yellow Solo Cup, I brush you up.
Proceed to party.
Proceed to party.
Proceed to party.
Proceed to party. Yellow Solo Cup, I brush you up.
Let's have a party.
Let's have a party.
A garden party.
A garden party.
Yellow.
Yellow
Solo.
Yellow Solo Cup.
You are my
friend.
Y'all remember, have a good one.
That was fun. Bye.